All right, everyone, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to 780U's free trial class on SAT reading. Whether you're taking the SAT soon and stressed about the reading section, 780U is here to lead you through what a real SAT reading class at 780U feels like. We have with us today one of 780U's students' favorite instructors, Dr. Neiman, who will be leading our class today. He is also teaching our paid SAT courses this winter. And so I'll just really quickly talk about these courses before we get started. As some of you may know, the SAT 10-day all-in-one strategy course starts on December 21st. For those of you who have already registered for this class, remember that you will receive a full refund on your registration if you dislike today's trial class, or if you haven't registered for the class yet but end up loving today's free trial session, it is not too late to sign up. The other three classes we have coming up in 2021 are the SAT mock test strategy and review classes, which consist of students taking a graded practice test each week and immediately going over it with personalized attention to their mistakes and offering strategies to fix them. We also have the SAT Common Traps course, which goes over the most common mistakes that students make on the SAT and reviews strategies to resolve them. So I'm going to be sending a link through the chat right now for all of the courses that I just mentioned. All right. Really quickly, we also have 3 more events coming up this December. So next Saturday on December 12th, we're holding an event called Early Decision Results Are Released, What is Next? Where we'll be inviting 780U's founder and experienced counselor to go over topics ranging from how to deal with a deferral to deciding what other schools you should apply to. So make sure to sign up if you or someone you know applied early to a school and are nervous about results coming out and what to do next. For our younger middle school students, we're holding another free trial class on December 19th, just like this one, but instead it's for pre-algebra, which is notoriously known as one of the most important foundational classes in every student's math journey. So make sure to join us for this interactive class where we'll go over all problems and foundation strategies. Now, lastly, on December 26th, this one is really, really exciting, so listen up. In order to celebrate the holiday season, 780U is bringing back an event we know everyone loves, Among Us. So just like for Halloween, we'll be hosting a big game of Among Us that is free for anyone to join. Everyone will receive $30 of 780U credit just by joining. And of course, we'll be doing a huge raffle at the end of our event for 3 winners to receive a $100, a $70, and a $40 Amazon gift card. We cannot wait to celebrate Christmas with everyone and give everyone some awesome gifts. All right, so that was enough talking from me. I'm dropping the information and registration links for all 3 of these great events in the chat box right now, so be sure to sign up early before everyone else. All right, now without further ado, I'm going to go into a quick introduction of our wonderful instructor who's here with us today, and then he can get us started. So just really quickly, today's amazing speaker and instructor is our 780U SAT teacher, Dr. Neiman. With a PhD in English literature and over 10 years of hands-on classroom experience, Dr. Neiman has an enduring passion for helping students master every facet of language-based testing challenges. Dr. Neiman knows that these challenges transcend the SAT itself and loves preparing students for a lifetime of success. After conquering both the SAT and the GRE, Dr. Neiman is ready to help every student reach their highest potential. He's also certified to teach English as a second language, and so he has the flexibility and enthusiasm to meet every student exactly where they are and moves together toward their personal goals. Now, Dr. Neiman, again, will be teaching several of the SAT courses this winter season that I just mentioned earlier. And so without further ado, I will let Dr. Neiman take it over and start today's class. Dr. Neiman, hello, are you here?
Greetings, greetings. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you guys. We have a nice group here with 27 people, which is awesome. So I'm going to get off to the races, guys. We don't have a ton of time tonight, so I want to be efficient and really get you guys some important information tonight. As a quick preface, I think with SAT reading, it is so important to underscore 2 things for you guys. And one was just mentioned briefly, that I am a big believer that it's important to be able to build skill bridges between SAT prep and what we do in the classroom here, and also how you guys are going to take those same tools and skills and succeed in other learning environments. That is very true, and it's also an important thing to maximize, the time and energy that you guys spend doing this. The second thing that I think is so important is to also grasp the contrary point, that there is something incredibly unique. Let me also share my screen as I walk us into this. there's something very unique about SAT reading, that it does not use the same skill sets that you do learn in school. And so there are a very complex particular set of signals and code, like sort of coded words and coded language that you need to be able to anticipate, that if we don't cover it together, for most people, it flies right past their consciousness. And the test writers really, they depend on that. And so I wanted to start class with not just one example, but one of my favorite teaching strategies is to show you guys multiple examples of the same exact problem. And so when I do this for you guys, we're going to look at 3 different examples of what I call the scope problem. The longer you study for SAT reading, the goal should be to realize that the content is taking a back seat to the construction of the questions and the answers. And so it matters less if you are in fiction, if you're in history, if you're in social science or science, that a lot of the problems and the traps, they transcend the content itself. And the scope problem that I'm going to introduce you guys to right now, we have a science example, we have a history example, and we have a fiction example. So let me start off by doing an annotation. The first thing about SAT reading, you are only as good at it as you are an annotator. And that was always one of my strengths when I was your age, is that I was an incredibly aggressive annotator. And when you annotate on the exam, you are changing what your brain sees, what you focus on, and that impacts your understanding. So let me go like this in dark purple. You can see this happening. I'm going to ask you guys a question. I'm not even going to tell you anything about, this is a science passage. It's something about gene farming, really weird with cats and cloning and all kinds of strange modern stuff. But I don't want you focused on the content, because you guys naturally read for content. I don't have to teach you that. I have many other things I have to teach you so you can succeed. Look at what I underlined. This is a primary purpose question 22. The primary purpose of the passage is to present the background of a medical breakthrough, evaluate the research that led to a scientific discovery, summarize the findings of a long-term research project, explain the development of a branch of scientific study. Let me shorten it even more. This is another fundamental technique that I impart on my students. Less and less and less. You need to train your brain to focus on fewer and fewer words. If you approach answers as a whole, you're at a disadvantage. And so even within the purple, one breakthrough, one discovery, one research project, one branch of scientific study. Out of those 4, I want to just ask you a simple question. What do you think is the biggest? One breakthrough, one discovery, one research project, or a branch or field of scientific study? Which of those is, quote, the biggest, the broadest? What do you guys think? A, B, C, or D? Oh yeah, guys, turn on your camera too. If you have a camera function and you're present, turn on the camera. It's great to see you guys and see your expressions. Which do you guys think is biggest out of those 4? A breakthrough, a discovery, one research project, or a branch of study, a field of study? Which one is broadest? Which one is most general? Take a stab, take a guess. We have 28 brilliant brains in the room. And put it in the Zoom chat. Drop your answer in the chat. Let me see. I can go to everyone. There we go. Any guesses? I don't think. Let me stop and reshare. Sometimes my chat gets frozen. Let's see. Let me X out of it and then go back in. Yeah, I don't think anyone's this is kind of an important part of class. I need to see what your brains think. Which is the broadest out of those 4? Which is the biggest? One medical breakthrough, one scientific discovery. So think of one discovery would be like, you know, you think of some sort of, I'm trying to think of an innovative sort of invention, maybe something about like the combustion engine. And then D is a branch or a field of study. Okay, I knew this would happen, and this is why I wanted to start class like this. So you guys, I think I have it set. So yep, it's public. Everyone can see publicly. The vast majority of people are picking D, and you're correct. And D is the correct answer here. What's amazing about this is that I was working with my student Linda this morning. Linda is going to be a perfect scorer. She is a great student. She got 2 wrong only out of the entire language-based portion of the test that we did for practice. So she's killing it. But she got 22 wrong. What's amazing about starting class like this is that by just underlining that and asking you guys a simple question that you could ask a little kid, which is biggest, you guys all decided it's D. And that difference that Linda, who is a seasoned test practicer, that she, after having read the whole passage, she is now, her brain is fixated on the concept of genetic farming and all this other stuff. This was one of the 2 times that she missed something obvious. And as soon as I underlined the purple, that's all I did. We were in class this morning and she went, ugh, and she sighed. And I love when my students do this because they can see that the way I annotate, she knows what scope means. And she knew, and I said, what's the problem, Linda? And she said, there's a scope problem. And I said, bingo. When we say that there's a scope problem, we are talking about narrow, really small versus something extremely wide and broad. There is no way in the world you guys will ever see a passage for SAT reading that can literally explain the entire development of a whole branch of scientific inquiry. It's not going to happen. There just is not the space to do that. The reason that she picked D, though, is this. In yellow, she was focused on these tonal words that are subjective, they're problematic, and they are not the objective sort of factual element of the answer that we need to train and focus the mind on. I said, what were you thinking about when you did this, when you were stuck on 22? And she said, I just kept thinking about development and background and development and background. She ended up, the correct answer is A. It's one medical breakthrough, it's one innovation. And so she said, I really preferred the word development. And I said, right, but that's subjective. It's a subjective preference between background and development. So the yellow is unimportant. The purple is the make it or break it moment, scope, that it cannot possibly be branch or field. This is just one example of scope. We're going to look at 2 more. Let's go over here to this exam. This is a different genre. This is a really tough history passage. And it's Karl Marx. It's about the French Revolution. The reading level, I didn't read Marx a lot until my PhD program. This really is not fair to give you guys marks. The syntax is convoluted. The word choice is awful. It's difficult to comprehend on a quick read. They know that, but the passage is still doable. You just have to cling to compact phrases that you really do understand, and you have to focus on the tools that I give you guys, things like scope, for example. So let's look at scope again. Let me get out my purple annotator. Same thing, it's a big picture question, just like the one we looked at. Over the course of the passage, the focus shifts from what to what? Let's go here in purple. What do you guys think in the Zoom chat? Which one is bigger? The entire political state of a continent or the nature of one idea, the nature of revolution? That's one idea. Or the political state of a whole continent. Which one is bigger? You got it. And so it's this simple, that it cannot be A, and the same way that in the science passage, it cannot be an entire branch or field of inquiry. You cannot cover the political state of an entire continent in a few paragraphs. It's not possible. You can chew on the nature of revolution and what causes it. The scope is much smaller. Virtually no one gets this question right. It's a 90 percenter. When I have classes like this with you guys, I know our time is limited. I tend to lead with extreme difficulty because it's the most instructive and helps you guys the most. It's efficient. The reason though, if it were this easy though, right? It's like I use that word, simple but not easy is the phrase I prefer. This is the problem that makes this really hard. Very difficult. I tell you what, if you guys, I think of students that don't do SAT class, they are like a sitting duck. I really feel for them because this is something you would never notice or learn on your own unless you had the luxury like I do, that this is a job I love and I get to study these exams for literally months and years, like when I see them. And so you would never just notice this if you were kind of just practicing casually. The yellow, it's tone, it's subjective, it's something that's arguable in court that the College Board would never be able to be sued over. An objective report versus an appreciative description. This is why people won't pick C. This is Karl Marx. I always joke, Marx didn't appreciate anything. He was a very dour sort of, person with a dark, ideological. I'm not necessarily evaluating his thinking or philosophy, but he was not a cheerful or chipper writer. And so the idea of saying appreciative description, that is ludicrous. Like that's very peculiar. They know it's peculiar. They know that your ear is going to feel like there's tonal dissonance and you won't pick C, and no one does, unless we've worked on scope, and then often they can get this correct, like after the fact. Objective report, that, however, does seem tonally apropos because we are in a kind of history philosophy passage that we're dealing with war, we're dealing with revolution, we're dealing with dates. And you guys often associate history with objectivity, with a record. And that's not necessarily a great association, right? That history is in many ways, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, it's the tale told by the people who win. So history itself is not objective, but they play off of that sense that history is a bunch of facts and they lock you into A with the tone, but the scope is massive. So with scope, I want you guys imagining the film camera in a movie, zooming in on someone's face is tight scope, really big and broad, we've got a big scope going on. It changes through the entire exam. Small, medium, large, larger. The scope is always oscillating. It's always moving in and out. And you have to really sensitize yourself to it. It's really critical. That's why I wanted to start class with it tonight, especially because I saw Linda miss that scope question today. And what a bummer that would be if she was about to nail that perfect score and she missed that one darn question on the scope. And it proves that scope is something that you can understand when I teach it to you, but in this very peculiar way, it's like an optical illusion. It will often stare you in the face and you can't see it. And so that's why I wanted to dwell on it tonight. One last thing about 33 and scope, and then something that we call grammar mapping as a technique. When they give you a dev pattern question, a developmental pattern, the focus shift for 33, they know one of the first things you guys are going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to skim the beginning. The College Board has a vast store of resources. They have a huge staff. They have draft after draft of these exams. They are kind of like Goliath, and we're sort of like David. They have a big sort of network of tools that they can use. One of them is that they like to predict where you guys will skim and then checkmate you based off of where you're going to skim at. And so look at this. There's a mention of Europe in the first line. That only worsens the likelihood that you're going to pick A by accident. That somehow when you go back and look at that first line and you're like, oh, right, it's about Europe. Oh, right, A is about Europe. It's like, no, we need to map the grammar. So let me read the sentence. The first act of revolutionary drama on the continent of Europe has closed. The subject is one single thing, one act. This is not the same thing as a report on the political state in the whole continent of Europe. So one thing happening in Europe is not the same thing as reporting on all of Europe, but they know you're going to go and skim the beginning. They drop a proper noun in there that's in their trap answer, and bam, they've got you. So it's like you have to be really sensitive to that idea that where you skim, there might be duplicated word choices, and oftentimes the proper nouns that are duplicated make it very difficult for the mind to resist. Just because it's the same wording doesn't mean it means the same thing. Something happening in Europe, one thing happening in Europe is not the same thing as a report on Europe. That's grammar mapping. When you take something so small as an in, an on, a the, an you can start to tweak your understanding of a small phrase, and it can give you an insight into an answer. Now, let's go one more spot for scope. Back to fiction. This is another one that people get wrong. This passage is a simple passage, but it wreaks terrible havoc on my people. Number one, it's a dialogue between two characters about hunting. That's all it is. Which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? It's another big picture question. I already underlined and marked a scope for you guys. Conversation, nationwide, society. Which of those is smallest? What's the smallest scope in the Zoom chat? Hit me with a guess. What's the smallest scope? You guys are killing it. This is great. See, this is why I always joke that SAT reading taught well, you could teach it to a small child almost. Like I feel like the principles are in the fundamentals. They feel basic, but the application is nuanced and sort of complex. But if I coach you guys can get the right answer. One is A. So you, just with me marking that and me priming you with this scope lesson, you're literally able to select the correct answer without even knowing what the passage is. I gave you a lowdown, like in a sentence, a summary, but you don't really know what's going on or, any of the rest of the pattern because I'm coaching you through scope, yeah? So the same issue though with the Karl Marx, let me get out my yellow. There's a tonal problem. Actually quite similar to the Marx question, where record versus appreciative description, the history seems objective report. This is very strange. A record of an often tense conversation. It's fiction and it's two people talking in a car, they're driving. The word record completely throws everybody for a loop because there's nothing being written. There's not like a stenographer like in the court typing in the back seat. There's no reason to associate the word record with what's going on here. And so that is the word choice that's tonal, that is problematic, that shoos the mind away from the correct answer. And then the scope though is correct, that there's only two characters, there is one conversation, that is completely it. So that's the key that we need to unlock one on this particular exam. Let's look at B and D though. A response to a nationwide controversy, a depiction of contemporary society. They both implicate a much, much wider scope than we have available. And in fact, there's something I want to clue you guys into here, a lesson that dovetails with scope. This is what I call a subset of scope. It's a smaller neighborhood in the larger realm of the scope problem. And it's this word controversy in orange. The smaller subset of scope problems is what I call consensus problems. When I talk about consensus, when we think about the word consensus, we mean typically agreement amongst a large number of people. You can say there was consensus in the department that their policy should change and school should, revise its dress code. That idea is about consensus, but it's in a department. So the department is perhaps smaller than the school, which is perhaps smaller than the country. Either way, controversy is a consensus word. Controversy signals disagreement, and it could be a disagreement amongst a group of people that is somewhat large, much larger, or largest, like the country. I did department, school, country. When you guys see consensus-based language like controversy, you frequently don't notice it. It flies past your brain, and they will often trap you guys like this. There'll be a science passage, and scientist Smith and scientist Jones, they completely disagree about genetic farming. Total disagreement. You know, there's no shared ground in their argumentative positioning. Okay, that's great, that's fine, they disagree. In the trap answer for one of the questions for that passage, they will refer to a controversy. And you guys will pick controversy because it's negative and it seems like disagreement, but it will be the wrong answer and it will be the trap, because a disagreement between two scientists is not a social controversy. Controversy, it necessitates a widespread consensus disagreement. And so that's a really important lesson to take away. And I'll tell you what, when you guys study for SAT reading, and what I'm trying to practice with you tonight, you would best be served by taking exam material that you have access to and literally studying the entire thing and saying, how many answers have a scope problem? How many questions have a scope problem? Annotate, highlight every single one, and I guarantee you it will be a bunch of them. And then you want to only let your eyes focus on scope. Then look for consensus-based answers. Let your eyes only study consensus so that you can start to really get a kind of hypersensitivity to the things that I try to teach you guys. Because that's a part of SAT reading, is it's not really about reading comprehension. It's about developing a hypersensitivity to a unique set of cues that are indicative of reading that's almost like the way lawyers read. It's not normal. You don't look for these things. It's not typical. One simple example that, let's do something simple since we just did scope. So those are my 3 examples for scope. Let's do something basic that's kind of fun and easy. Hold on. Yeah, if you guys have questions, hit me up in the chat. Let me see them in the chat. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Oh yeah, we've got 11 minutes. A simple thing. Look at the red in 11. Quantity cues. These are another things that fly past the mind. You just don't see them. Effects, cities, motivations, advantages. Let's go over here. Let's look at 15. Benefits, visitors, crowds. Okay. In just 11 and 15, there are 7 quantity cues. This is something that this is when I say simple but not easy. I can say look for quantity cues. Quantity cues are typically nouns that have an S on them that are indicating a plural. Really basic, right? You guys might be rolling your eyes or thinking, yeah, that's great. Okay, I see it. You will understand it now. You will miss it later. It's a guarantee that I will work with people on this for months sometimes, and quantity cues will still scoot past their consciousness, because the hypervigilance that this takes, you have to memorize scope, quantity, time, yoke, comparison, like all of these special tools that we have and we work with. So that's an easy one though. You can take that, put that in your back pocket, cash that at the bank, and just practice noticing how often do you really see quantity cues. I always tell this anecdote from one of my group classes where the class was like discussing the concepts of this. It was a political history passage, you know, those are the worst, right? Any kind of history mixed with politics. It was like 1770 or something. So everyone was deep in trying to untangle the confusing ideology in the passage. And I was just sitting there, like kind of like with a grin on my face. And everyone was like, what are you thinking? And I was like, no one sees it. I was like, do you? I was like, there's a cue in there that we just talked about 15 minutes ago. Look for it. I'd be quiet. Nothing. I'd be like, look at it, squint, like lean in. And I was like kind of teasing them. And they still didn't get it. And I said, guys, look. And I circled, and there was an S on politicians. And when you go up to the passage, there's only one politician mentioned. You can't pick it. Even though it's tedious, petty, and ridiculous, you cannot pick that answer because literally only one was there. And so the SAT is petty. Like I feel like the petty level is high. And so this is like, that's how lawyers read though. Lawyers read for loopholes. That's why the law is so complex and tricky. They read for minutia. And that's also what I have to coach you guys into reading for. But minutia is tough to see. We're not used to it. We read conceptually at school. It's not like reading for something like an S. Okay, we have 8 minutes. This is a difficult concept that, especially for the 5 to 7 most difficult questions for every batch of 52 in reading. It is not as simple as noticing an S on a word. It is about logical conditions. And I want you guys to imagine 3 separate logical conditions as a numerical sort of set. So I can even draw like a bar. So it's like over here, we've got 0, if I could draw with my cursor. Over here, we've got 1. And then there is a vast, vast possibility. I think, what is that, like Zeno's paradox, that there's an infinite space between 0 and 1? There really is, especially logically speaking. So 0 sounds like this: it will not rain tomorrow. 1 sounds like this: it will rain tomorrow. The vast in between is it might, it could, maybe it will rain tomorrow. What I need to show you about this little made up timeline is this. I'll mark over here at 0.00001, and I'll mark over here at 0.9999999, let's say to infinity. These 2 marks logically have more in common than this mark has with 1, or than this mark has with 0. Because if it's uncertain, period, from a logical standpoint, regardless if it's 0.01 or 9.99 or 0.999. But you guys don't hear it like that. When people see or hear language that is up against the 1 or is adjacent to the 0, people hear 0, they hear 1, you pick the wrong answer, and they've got you. There is a Bermuda Triangle here, just in this one set of fiction of 0, 1, and in between, and I'm going to show you guys how this works. Look at 2b. It can be inferred from the passage that Edmund is of English descent, but educated primarily in France. Educated primarily in France. Try to forget this is about a passage. What if you just met me and I said, I was educated primarily, at this school? What, based off of how I set this up, 0 is negation never, 1 is total confirmation complete. There's somewhere in between, the infinite space. It will rain, it won't rain, it could rain. If you're primarily educated in France, is it a 0, 1, or in between? Put that in the Zoom chat. You're primarily educated in France. 0, 1, or in between? I was primarily educated in France. You guys got it. At least a handful of people did. Let me take a swig of my coffee. Excellent. It's in between. When you say primarily, what people hear is a 1 because mostly educated. It's not a 1 though. It leaves the door ajar that if you say primarily, it actually almost implies there was some other detour where he was educated just a little bit somewhere else. And so that is an in-between. That is an uncertain logical statement. Now, let's look at 8D. Why does Catherine ask Edmund what an error is in lines 68 to 69? 8D. She has no idea where Edmund intends to drive next. 0, 1, or in between. She has no idea where Edmund intends to drive next. 0, 1, or in between. What do you think for 8D? She has no idea where Edmund intends to drive. You've got it. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It seems easy, but when you're doing this on your own, and you guys know this if you've done practice tests, SAT reading is so frustrating because it feels obvious in retrospect, but when you're in the moment, it's really difficult. When you see an answer like 8D, you can also see, yikes, 8B is also a 0. Her anger towards Edmund has abated completely. Sometimes when you get a 0, there's a classic negation cue, a contraction, didn't, wouldn't, couldn't, no, none, never. Often you get negation cues, but not always. When you say someone's anger abated completely, it means there's absolutely no anger left. You're at a complete 0. B and D, when you get 0, 1 answers, you cannot guarantee that that is not the answer. It's something you have to notice, and it forces you to check for something specific. So I can't give you a universalized rule, but I can tell you this, that 0 and 1 answers are intrinsically more risky. It's like, imagine a tightrope where you're getting smaller and smaller. When you have absolutely no anger, you better go make sure it says Catherine had 0 anger, and it expresses that in some way. So the 0 and 1s tend to be more risky. They are sometimes the correct answer, but it shows you what you've got to look for and what your brain should be thinking about. Now, we've got our in-between, we've got our zeros. Look at 4C. In the passage, Edmund responds to Catherine's remarks by forcefully persuading her to accept a moderate position. Forcefully persuading her to accept a moderate position. If you accept the position, a logical position, you accept it, period. 0, 1, or in between. What do you think? I accept the position. You guys are doing great. This is amazing. So this is a very tough idea, and like I said, this style of logic is dispersed throughout the whole test, and a lot of people struggle to get a handle on this. You guys already have it. We've got the one here, it's confirmation. Think of this alternative. I accept your position. I disagree with your position. Dis is the negation prefix. You will always see negations, even at the linguistic level, with a prefix, with a not. I disagree with you, 0. I accept your position, 1. You know, I'm still thinking about it. In between. In between, you've almost got me. Like, I mostly believe you. I can hardly believe that. It's like the 0.0001, but it's not a 0. It's not the disagreement. This Bermuda Triangle is on virtually every single passage where the answers are shifting between the 0, 1, in between, and it has a really powerful impact on your score of whether or not you can discern this difference between these 3 different conditions. And so if you can't see this or understand this, you're at a distinct disadvantage, you know, for the entire exam. Last really quick thing at 610. This, because I just covered a couple really difficult things, I want to leave you guys with something simple and easy. Look at the ly ending words. You will see them. We've looked at 2 of them, but primarily, forcefully. Look at number 9, completely, grudgingly, sharply, entirely. Let's look at 15. I think there was one really important one I wanted to show you guys here, but we'll run it. Look at the primarily again. It's the same word as in primarily educated in France. If you annotate one exam, 52 sets of questions for the ly ending words, you will see these words everywhere. And it's a simple, easy thing. Look up here, look at 14. There they are, they're stacking them. The reason they do this is because they often change the scope, and they often change the shift to the 0, 1 in between. So if you look for the ly ending words, that's another helpful tool laying up. All right, guys, I'm going to toss it back here. Thank you so much for listening. You guys are doing great. I hope to see you in class over winter. That would be wonderful. I love teaching SAT. It's fun, it's rigorous, it's challenging, and it's important for your lives for sure. So looking forward to it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Neiman. I hope everyone definitely learned a lot. Yes, I see some awesome chats about today's great class.
Awesome.
So really quickly, let me just reshare my screen again, hoping everyone can see the PowerPoint. So I wanted to quickly introduce to everyone our 70DU academic advisor, Trinzy, who will be there every step of the way as a 70DU student to guide you to success. So Trinzy, if you're here right now, could you share with us a little bit more about our SAT courses?
Definitely. Hello. Hi, Dr. Neiman. Thank you so
Hi.
much for giving us this process today.
Yeah,
And everyone, nice. And everyone, this is not the end of this trial class. So actually, I have one more thing I want you to do is please type one thing that you have learned from this trial class. Type in the chat box, because at 70DU, we really promote this self-regulated learning. And then one part of this learning cycle is for you guys to reflecting and then reviewing what you learned. Oh, nice. Isabel says scope. Yeah, just type one thing. 0 to 1 skill. Yeah. I love seeing all those feedbacks coming up from students. Perfect. Logic skill. Thank you, Eric. We're just waiting for a little more answers from you guys. And also, I definitely want to talk about our upcoming SAT classes, especially for our SAT 10-day all-in-one strategy. It's like a winter boot camp. There are some highlights I've summarized for you for our strategy classes, that 10-day all-in-one class. So one thing is it is really unique and comprehensive. I believe our content and class structure is there's like nowhere you can find, and it's very comprehensive and intense SAT training class. It is designed to help all the students to systematically study all 4 SAT subjects, including reading, writing, math, and essay. And then we also building pre and also post assessment tasks to assess learning effectiveness of the class. So the second thing, nice. Did I say like word endings and prefix? Perfect. And definitely, if you have any questions for me or Dr. Neiman, please feel free to type in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, and then we will allow you to talk to us directly. The second thing about our winter boot camp, it is highly qualified teachers. So class will be taught by 4 highly qualified teachers specializing in each subject. And in our amazing lecture today, Dr. John Neiman will be teaching strategies on reading passage type. And we have Dr. Greblick, who has 25 more years of academic experience with bachelor degree from Yale and doctor degree from USC. He'll be teaching reading question type strategies and also writing strategies. And our SAT, ACT chief scoring leader, Miss Lisa, will lead the essay sections. And then Daryl, who has 12 years of teaching experience, will share all the math strategies with all of you. The third thing, it's very interactive. Just like today's class, we encourage all students to participate and actually speak to each other. So through all of this, although there's like online meetings, but we will maintain the feeling and also the interactivity of just like on-site classes. So students participate, you offer ideas, and there is actually a dialogue between you and the lecturer, and hopefully between you and your peers. 4 things. The first one is individualized learning support. Just like what you did for each time of the class, we will send out the learning journey survey right before each class ends, just like what we're doing right now. And then also our academic coach will facilitate each student doing your time with us. We will send out the class report and also the homework reminders after each class. We also have something really unique, I would say, one-on-one midterm review and final individual review sessions. And then we'll provide personalized study plan based on your current ability and your goal score and after our each group class. The last thing about the highlights is the progress and results. So our SAT classes has a proven track record of helping students achieve math improvement. Thank you so much, Dr. John Neiman. And among all the students who have followed our study plan, 80% of them have scored SAT 1500 plus, and 90% of students have already improved 100 points on SAT. Okay, let me admit one person into this group. Perfect. So, yes.
Sorry, I got a question from the chat from a student who wants to know just what is the schedule of Dr. Neiman's specific SAT classes?
You know what? Let me just send out the schedule in the chat box and everyone can see it.
Awesome, thank you.
If you have any questions, you can also raise your hand. Then you can actually have a conversation with me and with Dr. John even. I think that would be cool. Send to everyone. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. So here is the schedule. As I mentioned, so we have like a pre-class Dunning's test for those students who has not done mock test 5 before. And then we have the lecture from December 21st to January 30th. So I think after January, the classes in January, those classes are taken every Saturday. Yeah. And then lastly, after the last class, we will have the post-class Dunning's test sent to all of you. And
Awesome.
yeah.
Thanks, Trinzy. Is that all that you have for us today?
Yeah, I'm also curious, like, do we get more feedback from the audience? I see around like 10 to 15, but I think we have more students out there. We can
Yeah,
wait.
that was the only question that I got privately, but feel free to drop your other questions in the chat, everyone. Really quickly, I think you can also email us at our contact information that's on the bottom of that PowerPoint at info@7edu.org if you want to chat with Trinzy more, or you can also WeChat Trinzy as well if you have further questions about applying to any of these, going to any of these SAT classes. So lastly, I'm going to also send through the chat box all of our contact information, a list of events that we have coming up that I talked about earlier today, as well as the link to sign up for our SAT classes online. And then I think a couple of us are going to hang on the class or hang out on this Zoom meeting for a little bit. So if you have any more questions, definitely either chat us or unmute yourself as well. Trinzy, I have another question from a student. Do you have class on Sundays?
Do we have class on Sundays? Okay. Give me one quick question. Definitely for our, not only for our group classes, our one-on-one classes, we can schedule a class between you and the students anytime. And in winter, I think for most of our winter boot camp is taking between your holiday time and then your Saturday time after December. For Sunday, I would like to know, like, can you send me a private message? And I want to like know your current ability and your goal. Then maybe I can come up with an individualized customized plan for you. Then that would definitely tailor to your time schedule.
Awesome, thank you.
And also on this screen, you can see my WeChat QR code out there. So you can just use your phone and then scan it.
I had another question from a student, Trinzy, who asks, what is the workload like between classes?
Ooh, so I assume you were talking about homework. Then for each class, I would think like, please at least put out like 1 to 2 hours to finish our homework. Yeah. And then for each day, that is like a 4-hour classes.
Yeah, the homework is so important. Like I know it's hard on you guys, but especially for the reading, you have to engage with the material in a routine way, or else you'll plateau. Like, it's tough if you don't. I even tell my people like once a week isn't enough. It needs to be something that's sequential and routine. Yeah.
So our class time is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Just like PST time.
I'm not seeing any more questions on my end. Keep it coming, guys, if you guys have any more questions.
And we always break up the 9 to 1 too, guys. I know that time block seems like, it might seem like a lot to you for a sitting, but it really goes by super quick. Like I chunk it by hour. And so we have a short little break every hour, and I break stuff up like in exercises and we discuss the exercise. So it really flies by. It doesn't feel, I'm not gonna sit and, bore you to tears without changing the pacing or the level of engagement for 4 hours either. So that's important too. It goes by pretty quick.
And they will have breaks, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Don't go anywhere within those
That
4
would be
hours.
so funny if I was like, don't move. Like,
Definitely. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah. System.
Ooh, exciting news, everyone. We have a student who just privately chatted me saying that she would like to sign up for classes with Dr. Neiman, but specifically on Sundays. So Trinzy, could you give us a little bit more information on how the student could do that?
I think you can have, we would like to schedule one-on-one classes for you with Dr. John Neiman. Please send me but we will still need to know your current ability and then your goal score. Then there will be a customer's plan for you. So please send me a message and then we can talk about this and arrange a meeting maybe after this call real quick.
Awesome, thank you.
And I did look. So for our Sunday classes, currently our group class offers a mock test strategy and review on Sunday. Yeah, we do mock tests on Saturdays. Then we send you the task and then you do whatever you want. But please using our timer. That's like within 4 hours, you need to complete this task. And then we will do our review sessions on Sunday. I will send out the schedule in our chat box as well. This is targeting March test. Yeah. So students who are asking about the Sunday schedule, please contact me after this call. Oh yeah, I will leave my email address real soon. Thank you.
I'm excited to meet you guys for the one-on-ones too. It'll be productive and fun too, for sure.
Dr. Neiman, could you share really quickly sort of what does a one-on-one class with you look like?
Yeah, so I feel like what we do is we basically use your homework to create a more idiosyncratic and individualized targeted study so that I can see what your biggest weaknesses are. And I'll teach to your weaknesses and shore up systematically one by one, like what you're really struggling with, because every student is different. And so it's important to sort of see where the weakness is and then attack it aggressively until you feel like you've got that one weakness under control. And then I move on to the next one. And so I try to keep things not only aggressive, but also sort of simple. Like that's one of the best teaching philosophies, I think, is like keep the fundamentals intact. And so we'll fundamentally go through. And usually for SAT reading, it's like, you know, I know everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, but there are some really common core fundamentals to work on too for SAT reading. So I always focus on those in the one-on-ones as well. So yeah.
Great, thank you, that's helpful.
For sure, for sure.
Any other questions from folks in the audience? I know we have quite a few students still on the call.
I'm sure you guys are just thrilled waiting for your March exam. Like, I feel like.
Oh, I actually have one student that's asking me, like, I heard the tasks have been canceled a lot of times. So like, do you have a suggestion when they should register the test?
I always tell everybody, as far as like studying too, that I think you guys might remember this. If anybody, I kind of made this point in one of our recent open talks that the SAT isn't going anywhere. I know that things have been canceled and things have been up in the air, but I would register for the soonest. Well, not necessarily the soonest, depending on what year you guys are in school, what your study plan is, but I would start studying now and presume and assume that it will be just as important as it always was. So try not to get that attitude of like that there's a snow day happening and everything's canceled. Like I feel like that really worries.
Not gonna happen, students.
Yeah, I know, right? Because that's just, it's not going to happen. Like I feel like even the UC system, which has been the boldest out of all of the systems to say, oh, we're going test blind, the UCs are looking at developing their own exam. And so what they're going to do is they're going to swap the tests so that they can get the revenue instead of the College Board. So you can't run a 25,000 person university without a common measuring stick. It's just too complex, I think. So study now, not later. Like, yeah.
And also prepare for the SAT essay. I got tons of questions asking about, hey, can I just don't take that?
Why'd you, that is something, I don't know where we all get this message that it's optional. One of my recent students, Skylar, he got into Harvard last year and he took the essay seriously and he got a perfect score on the essay. And I really do think that as a writing instructor myself, that schools really do value people who can communicate really well. And that's something that schools also struggle with. I know even my campus that there's so many extra resources that the school has to offer when people are struggling. And so I think they really do see it as an attractive attribute when you guys can nail the essay portion of the exam too. Yeah.
There any other questions? Yeah, actually in a class setting, we will really need everyone to turn on their camera.
Yeah.
Then we'll get an opportunity to actually talk to us.
Yeah, you can't be shy like during class.
So don't hide there. We need to see.
No hiding.
Pay attention. Whatever.
It's too easy to fall asleep, guys, when the camera's off. Like,
Oh yeah. Hey, Anne, do you see any more questions from on your side?
Lindsay, no, I don't have any more questions. So I think since we've gone a little bit over time here, I think I'll just wrap it up then. So thank you so much to Dr. Neiman and to Trinzy, both of you guys, for being on this call and sharing everything that you guys know with us today. Lastly, of course, if you have any questions, make sure to contact us. Contact Trinzy. Her email is in the chat, and we look forward to going to class with all of you guys. Thank you so much. We'll end this call really shortly.
Thank you guys. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night, everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
See ya.
See ya. Good night.